So I thought you would dwell more on, viruses and bacteria, and here we are talking about nutrition. Why is this conversation so important today?
A majority of illnesses in children actually are to do with unhealthy lifestyles.
When I think of whole grains, I think about brown bread. Is this the same thing or is it something else?
Brown bread doesn't necessarily mean whole grain bread. So we need to be very aware what these food labels are talking about.
Incorporate at least half of your plate with fruits and veggies, and it almost seems impossible to do.
All we need to do is disguise them, hide them, chop them, do whatever it is with them.
We've also seen, an uptick in the sort of micronutrient deficiencies.
1 in 2 children are actually iron deficient. And
What exactly is junk food?
you would be surprised to know how much of junk food we actually make at home.
One thing that comes to my mind, and I've always wondered about this, is the sugar intake about a child.
If you're going to keep eating your candies, it's like you're smoking a cigarette. Have you heard about YouTube feeding?
Oh, I've seen enough of that and I dread a lot.
But we need to stop that. That is non-negotiable. Because the impact of a screen is... Hi, I'm Dr. Supraja Chandrasekar. Welcome to Dhee Kids. This is your information portal on everything that a parent needs to know about their child's health, a pediatrician's perspective. I'm a pediatric intensivist by profession, but most importantly, I'm a parent myself of 2 teenagers. I understand the nuances of how to make our children healthy, keep them healthy, and maintain a healthy lifestyle. So today, I invite a beautiful parent, an inquisitive young lady with a young child to discuss about children's nutrition. So welcome, Nargis. Lovely to have you here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Supraja. Very glad that you have me here today. Doctor, I've always known of you to be an ICU doctor taking care of sick children. So I thought you would dwell more on, viruses and bacteria, and here we are talking about nutrition. Why is this conversation so important today?
Yes, that's very interesting. When I started my career about 2 decades ago, it was all about diseases and, as you said, the bugs in the ICU and how children are when they are sick.
Right.
Later, I did realize the outcome of their illness depends on their baseline health status, especially their nutrition. And further on, I understood the impact of lifestyle. And that's when my interest on children's nutrition grew. You would be surprised to know that a majority of illnesses in children actually are to do with unhealthy lifestyles. For example, you must have heard about dengue fever, and we're entering into monsoon.
Right.
And a simple dengue fever gets complicated when it is present in an obese child,
Oh, good
because their weight increases. How do we calculate their fluids, the impact on the internal organs, and obesity itself is an inflammatory condition. So that's where it is very important for all of us to understand the impact of nutrition in a child's health.
So wow, doctor, I mean, that's a very interesting perspective. Now, since we're talking about kids' nutrition, I would love to understand, what is it that makes a kid's meal healthy?
Yes, let's go straight into the topic.
Yes.
Now, all of us must have seen in our children's textbook a food pyramid, and they talk about the base with lots of grains in it and said we need to eat lots of what is in the base and very little of what is in top, which is mainly ice creams and chocolates. But that's pretty useless. When we are sitting in front of our lunchbox or our food plate, we need to know the exact proportion of the types of food and make it very simple for the child and for ourselves. So a lot of research has gone into creating this concept of 5 on our plate.
Okay.
To simplify it, we need to make half of the child's plate fruit and veg,
Okay.
only quarter of it to be grains, and as much grains as we eat, we need to have proteins, which is another quarter, and the 5th element is dairy, especially curds.
Okay, so doctor, what do you actually mean by these grains and proteins? Because I'm sure most mothers like me, new mothers, we're often confused about what it really means.
Yeah, let's go straight into it. But I want you to understand this meal plate is designed and studied for children above 2 years of age.
Okay, understood.
We have a different formula and different science behind infant nutrition and the
Right.
when they are less than 2 years.
All right. Okay.
So going to the preschooler and the school age child, let's start with the grains. So grains are quarter of our plate. Now, what is a grain? A grain is a source of carbohydrate mainly, and as we know, carbohydrate is the energy giver, and we eat food primarily for energy. And if we don't use the energy, it gets stored as fat in our body. So we need to balance the amount we eat with our activity. So quarter of our plate only should comprise of grains. And the interesting thing is at least half of these grains to be whole grains.
So, doctor, tell me, what are these whole grains? When I think of whole grains, I think about brown bread. Is this the same thing, or is it something else?
Yes, you're partially right. So have you ever seen a grain of rice or wheat?
Mm-hmm.
You would notice that it's quite polished
Correct.
and it doesn't have the bran or the husk. But when we actually see it on a plant, we have a little covering on it, which is called as the bran or the husk.
Correct.
And that is the one which has maximum fiber and it kind of captures all the vitamins and minerals. So it's nutrient dense.
Okay.
Now, when we polish this grain, we remove this husk and we're left with only the pure carbohydrate,
Correct.
which is actually empty calories. It doesn't have much of nutrients. So, eating whole grains mean that we eat the grain along with its fiber, packed with vitamins and minerals. You must have heard about this millet wave. Everybody is talking about millets. Even in the
correct.
White House, when they welcomed Modi, they had millets on it.
Absolutely.
So, what is it about millet? If we go back to our history, India was the country where millets were born, and
Correct.
we were millet eaters basically.
Right.
Millets are little grains
Correct.
where you can't actually remove the outer covering from inside. So, it
Absolutely.
actually comes always whole. So,
Absolutely.
it is nutrient dense whenever
no-
we eat it.
Yeah, correct. So no option of actually polishing it at all.
Yes, very true.
Mhm.
So it becomes a healthy grain when we eat it.
Understood.
And later on, we just went into eating more polished grains, which is not very healthy.
Correct.
So we need to go back to our roots and eat millets. So
Absolutely.
coming back to your brown bread doesn't necessarily mean whole grain bread. So
Okay.
we need to be very aware what these food labels are talking about.
That's right.
What we need to really look for is whole grain, because what we want is the grain with the husk and the packed nutrients in it.
Wow, very, very interesting. Now, besides grains, the other conversation that is very prevalent in all nutrition circles these days with all parents, which is about protein. I really want to understand what is it about protein that has got it back into focus so much these days. And the other thing that I had on my mind, and I'm sure a lot of mothers are wondering about, is these protein supplements. Are they meant for kids as well, or should we only restrict it to the gym going parents?
Okay, let me piece it down a bit. So, as you rightly said, there's a protein wave going on and everyone's talking about proteins. Indian diet per se is primarily heavy on grains or carbohydrates. However, we now understand only quarter of our plate to be the grains, which is basically your wheat, rice, ragi, oats, etc. Now, proteins are elements which are building blocks of the body. So they actually help in growth and repair. And this is a very, very important part of our meal. And the amount of grains we eat, we need to eat the same amount of proteins. In other words, quarter of our meal plate to be made of proteins. Proteins are basically mainly vegetarian or lean protein sources such as pulses, legumes, etc. We could include non-vegetarian sources based on the food preferences of the family, and that should not be something which it should not be the staple source of protein. It could be a couple of days in a week, let's say, but generally the meats are heavy on fat as well, so we need to choose the lean meat, such as fish meat or eggs, etc., and go towards pork and red meat much more rarely, because they're more of fat and the protein gets lost in it.
Okay, very, very interesting. Now, besides protein, there's this conversation about veggies. There's a conversation about the rainbow plates. There's a conversation about wanting to incorporate at least half of your plate with fruits and veggies. And it almost seems impossible to do. How does a new mother, or how does a mother who's, just started a nutritious diet for the children, how do you incorporate that on a daily basis?
Yes. So I reiterate, half the plate to be fruit and vegetables, and that's very important. So it's not just vegetables. Some children prefer to eat veggies, some children prefer to eat fruits, but basically, this fiber rich source has to be a major part of their lunchbox or their plate. Now, vegetable doesn't have to be traditionally served as what we call a palya or a curry or a dish on its own. It could be incorporated within the grain. You must have heard of methi parathas and
Correct.
parathas with beetroot and dosas with grated carrot, etc.
Right.
So all we need to do is disguise them, hide them, chop them,
Yeah.
do whatever it is with them, make them interesting,
Right.
make it artisanal so
Yeah.
that a child actually eats them.
Absolutely. I think I've seen enough and more content out there as well, with mothers trying to just, find ways of incorporating these veggies somehow in their children's plates. Thank you so much for answering that question. Another question that we have, I'm sure most mothers have, is about the dairy content. How much of dairy is good for a child? At what age? Could you tell us what are the various ways or forms of dairy that could be incorporated in a child's diet?
Yes. So we have the fifth element being dairy, which is either milk or curds. We do prefer curds because it's fermented milk. It has all the nutrients of the milk, as well as it is a prebiotic and a probiotic. So it's very important to incorporate it in a child's daily diet. It improves the gut health. It improves gut immunity as well. Now, there are a lot of myths about whether curds could be eaten in the evening or could we
Yeah,
give it at night?
true.
Do we give it for children who are younger? Does it cause cold?
Correct.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I mean, if you look at the Western countries, they live on yogurt. And we are blessed with a tropical climate where we can actually ferment curds,
Absolutely.
make it in the morning, and we get it nice and fresh and creamy by afternoon. And that
Absolutely.
is beautiful because it has a lot of live bacteria, and this bacteria helps in digesting the food and helps the nutrients to get absorbed better. So
Great.
yes, curds is an important part of a child's diet.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think that surely helps me understand the whole nutrition, what it should look like on a plate for a mother. But despite these conversations about nutrients, we've also seen, an uptick in the sort of micronutrient deficiencies. And I believe, despite whatever conversations we're having, kids still seem to be prone to these deficiencies these days. Why is that the case?
Yes, let me set the context right. The commonest deficiency that we are seeing is iron deficiency in our children. And you wouldn't believe it, 1 in 2 children are actually iron deficient.
Oh, good God.
And a majority of them cause anemia, but not necessarily. Not all children who have iron deficiency land up getting anemia.
Okay.
So let's look at iron. Iron is a very important mineral which is required in small quantities in our daily diet, and it plays a vital role in growth, in development, as well as immunity, especially in building the hemoglobin. As you all know, the hemoglobin is the red content of our blood, and the iron actually contributes to that red content. So when iron becomes low, the oxygen carrying capacity or the red content of the blood or the hemoglobin comes down.
All right.
And when the oxygen carrying capacity comes down, almost every organ of our body gets affected. But a child need not be that deficient to go into anemia every time. Even smaller amounts of deficiencies do have impact on children. Did
Okay.
you know that it impacts their IQ?
Oh.
About 10 points of their IQ go down when they have iron deficiency.
Oh my
So
goodness.
yes, it is a brain mineral as well,
Oh,
and
wow.
we need to include that in our diet.
Wow. Iron being the brain mineral, is this is the first time I'm hearing of it, and I'm sure mothers, parents watching this would be, would taking this into consideration now. I'm sure grocery runs to buy spinach and all iron-rich foods is going to start very, very soon.
So coming on to that, what color is iron?
Oh, wow. Very interesting.
It's about reddish brown. It's a
Okay,
very dark colored
correct,
mineral. So we're never going to find it in white colored food.
correct.
Now, if we look at what our children eat mainly, they start with idli, dosa, white rice, curds, milk especially. They're all devoid of iron. They are white colored food. So they don't have any iron in it. What a child really needs is to eat red and brown as well as green colored food. So that's when we'll need to look at where is the spinach, the dates, the almonds, the rajma, red meats, etc. Because all of them are iron rich sources.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that information with us. Now, I've, always wanted to ask this, and again, there are so many conversations about junk food, in today's time and place. So I want to understand a little bit about what exactly is junk food.
Well, Nargis, before I answer that, have you ever thought about what is healthy food before we come to what is junk food?
I think something that would, be traditionally made in a kitchen is, I attribute that to perhaps healthy food and something which has all the nutrients, etc., that you mentioned about. But usually more than that, it's the perception of being made at home. Something made at home is
Ah,
probably healthy food because I've taken care of all the things.
not necessarily. You would be surprised to know how much of junk food we actually make at home. So let's look at exactly what is healthy food. So food per se, why do we need it? We need it because it is a source of energy, like the grains provide energy, and it also is a source of proteins, which is the building blocks of our food. Apart from that, it also has a lot of micronutrients, which is the vitamins and the minerals, as well as the fiber, which are important aspects of the health. So, all of this put together is healthy food. On the other hand, what junk food does is it provides only calories and doesn't have any of the nutrients attached to the calories. So it may not have the fiber, the proteins, the vitamins, or the minerals. So making it what we call empty calories. For example, a tasty soda would just mean calories. Where is the protein or the fiber, vitamins, or minerals? So that is typically empty calories. Also, junk food has hormone disruptors, metabolic disruptors, something which
Correct.
is bad for you, like the additives, the
Yeah.
preservatives, the high salt and sugar,
Correct.
and a lot of these anti metabolic elements that are added into the food, including saturated fats, which make it junk. So, a food that does not have what I call the magic elements of vitamins, fiber, minerals, and protein, but has only calories, as well as it has one of these disruptors, is called junk food.
Oh, good God. So, just to add on to whatever you're saying, in fact, I would like to ask you a question. Can you name one food item that we usually consume in our Indian kitchens, which is worse than, let's say, junk food that's consumed outside, or something that you could, attribute to being an unhealthy, option, but is being looked at as a healthy option?
Sure. So, not all the food that we do make is balanced or
Correct.
very healthy.
Correct.
It doesn't fit into our criteria for a meal plate. For example, let's just take puri palya that we make at home,
Correct. Oh my
right?
God. Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of a staple breakfast or even a lunch option. But if you look at it, it has the grains, which is the wheat based, which is deep fried, and we eat it with, let's say, a potato side dish,
Correct.
and it has no other veggies in it. So what does it have? It has basically starch or the grain element.
Correct.
It doesn't have any, hardly has any proteins or the fiber, and vitamin and minerals are minuscule. So this is an unbalanced plate, almost going towards junk food.
Almost.
On
Yeah.
the other hand, if we, for example, make a healthy pizza at home, where we make the dough ourselves with whole grain wheat, and we use some low fat butter, and we make, let's say, a paneer dish and apply it on the pizza. Uh, do not use any of the ready made sauces,
Sauces.
etc., and fill it up and load it with veggies and some cheese or paneer. That becomes much more healthier because it has the protein, it has the fiber, it has a lot of vegetables, etc.
Absolutely crazy to even think that this is the way to look at puri palya as compared to pizza. Now, when it comes to unhealthy, one thing that comes to my mind, and I've always wondered about this, is the sugar intake about a child. And in fact, I recently read about CBSE starting the sugar boards in school. What is that all about now?
Yes, there's a lot of talk about sugar. Did you know that sugar and salt is the new tobacco in children?
Oh my
So
God. Okay.
that's
It's
what I tell
crazy.
children, that if you're going to keep eating your candies, it's like you're smoking a cigarette,
Oh,
because they have huge addictive power. So let's look at sugar per se. Um, Sugar in food is basically a carbohydrate source. It gives what we call a high glycemic index. It raises your blood glucose levels very quickly, and it demands a lot of insulin for it to be metabolized. And if we don't metabolize all the sugar, it's definitely going to result in a lot of problems like childhood obesity, insulin resistance, later developing into diabetes, dental caries, and most importantly, the brain gets rewired in a way where they need sugar gratification with every meal or with every emotional aspect. So they
absolutely.
wire totally differently, and they seek or crave these sugar
Craving.
based foods.
Yeah.
So, sugar definitely causes a lot of adult onset diseases in childhood.
Oh,
Now, what you rightly mentioned, the CBSE has come up with this exemplary idea of having sugar boards in schools. Now, what is a sugar board? It's a brilliant visual graphic on the common foods that we eat and how much of sugar it has in terms of teaspoons. For example, a preschooler should hardly have about 4 teaspoons of sugar in their entire day. And if they have just one fruit juice packet, they're done. They have about 20 grams of sugar already in it. So it exceeds their daily intake of sugar.
my
And you need to know what is this added sugar. And people think added sugar means you are adding further sugar and that's all that they need to worry about. Not necessarily. All the honey, all the sauces, all the jams, everything is sugar laden. There are foods like our basic breakfast cereals, the biscuits, the sauces, bread, which is high on sugar,
Oh
and they
my
come
God.
disguised. So these are
Silent killer.
silent monsters. Exactly.
Absolutely. We said it at the same times. Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't be thinking about it like if it's not sweet enough, or you don't see it visually, or you taste it,
Correct.
you don't think of it as sugar at all. So I'm sure this initiative is certainly going to help
It is
parents and kids and bring about that awareness that's very much needed in today's perspective.
very true.
Now, one question. Now, like you said, to satiate the hunger of, the evening hunger, or sometimes to talk about these snacks. So, what options can kids have as healthy snacks, doctor?
Yeah, I struggle with snack
I'm
options. I
sure.
mean, I literally dread the 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Children come from school, they are hungry,
Yeah.
they've been craving for good stuff, and they've seen way too many ads which tell them what is available for them. And all they want to do is, Mummy, give me some money, we'll go down to the shop and buy something.
Correct.
Well, so let's just understand scientifically what a snack means. A snack is basically an incomplete meal. So we spoke about the 5 elements in a meal. Well, a snack doesn't have all the 5 elements. It has probably just one element. For example, a fruit yogurt or a fruit curd, which is made at home, is a snack. It's mainly having a protein and, let's say, a bit of carbohydrate, but not the other elements. Or an omelette with egg is a snack, or just sautéed paneer, etc. So these are healthy options where these are wholesome foods, foods that are got fresh, do not come in a packet, and don't undergo too much of processing. Interestingly, the Indian Academy of Pediatrics describes these highly processed foods as really something we need to avoid. And
Okay.
they say that any of these processed and packaged foods to be consumed on a maximum once a week basis.
My God.
Yes, but
My God.
unfortunately, all of our biscuits, chips, chocolates, cakes, juices, packaged juices, yogurts which are available
Package.
are all packaged. They're all sugar and salt laden, apart from the preservatives and the additives. And eaten on a daily basis, they definitely cause metabolic changes. They definitely impact their overall health. And yes, as you might have read, many of them can even cause cancer when eaten regularly on a long term basis, including the innocent children's cereal as a breakfast.
My goodness, that's very scary to even think about. And I'm sure we all need, as mothers, we all need to be very, very cognizant of what we are putting on our child's plate and
Yep.
to ensure those habits are set right from day zero of when they start their food journey. But besides food, doctor, since you spoke about the healthy plate and what constitutes a healthy meal, what are the other things that a parent needs to keep in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just their nutrition. I commonly tell children what they eat, how they play, and how they connect with themselves, with their family, and with nature determines their overall health. And it's not just about what they eat, it's also about how they eat it.
Okay.
Have you heard about YouTube feeding?
Oh, I've seen enough of that, and I dread a lot whether I'm going to, turn into that mom as well, because I'm scared of doing that.
That's
Honestly.
right. Most mothers do come up and tell me during consultation, my child never eats, but definitely when I switch on the screen, that is the only time I switch on the screen, my child eats better. And I tell them, stop it. It doesn't matter if your child doesn't eat, but we need to stop that. That is non-negotiable, because the impact of a screen is far-fetched. It disrupts long-term health. So there was this interesting Scandinavian study where they studied two groups of children, large cohort, almost about 10,000 children. They gave them the same type of food, both the groups. And one was in front of screens and the other was in the traditional way with the parents, etc., on a dining table. And despite the same type of food that the two groups ate, the group that ate in front of the screens had a higher incidence of obesity and diabetes. So can you
God.
guess why?
My God, because they were sedentary and they were looking constantly at the television.
Yes, definitely sedentary behavior is important, but it does more than that. Look, when you're looking at the screen, the focus and the child's mind is completely immersed into what the child is seeing,
Okay.
not about what the child is eating. So they don't have any idea about hunger and satiety. They don't know when they're getting full. So they eat till their plate finishes or till the chips packet is over,
Oh, wow,
and then
correct.
they look for more. It's the popcorn syndrome when
It's
we're,
the popcorn syndrome, yes.
when we're looking at screens in the theater. So a child definitely tends to overeat, and that is what mothers capitalize in their early years. But what they don't understand is later on this behavior continues and a child tends to eat much more,
Much more.
high risk of obesity, and definitely metabolic syndrome. And it's not just that. When we look at screens, 50% of what we see is advertisements. They are hypnosis, according to me.
Yeah.
Hypnosis to eat more junk food. The way they show the creamy ice cream, the way, the drinks
Yeah.
just splash in front of them. Even I get hungry looking at
No,
it.
of course.
Yes.
Of course.
So that little brain in that little child gets completely mesmerized with the food they see, and that's what they're going to seek unconsciously. So, no eating in front of screens, and that's non negotiable.
My goodness, absolutely, doctor. These are very important things to keep in mind, and this conversation to me has been absolutely helpful, and I'm sure to all the mothers out there watching as well, who are either in the in the beginning of their whole nutrition journey for their children, just like me. I have a 7-month-old boy today, but even when I know that he's going to be reaching this 2-year milestone or a 3-year milestone, I will at least be more mindful of what goes on in
Absolutely.
on that plate. So thank you so much for this conversation, and thank you so much for having me. And I will look forward to all the episodes that you release, so that I'm well aware.
I'm glad it was useful and
Thank you.
lovely to have you here. I do hope this video was useful. Do share it with your friends, and don't forget to write in your comments about your experiences and your questions. I would love to answer them. Stay tuned for further episodes on children's health. See you.